thank you all for joining. This is our Flexible Services webinar for November 2020. So we're going to be looking at some of our current requirements, doing a bit of a demo and stuff today, and I will talk you through the rest as we go. So in terms of introductions, so welcome, hi, my name is Lois Clark. I'm our DSO Commercial Manager at Electricity Northwest. So my role is completely centred around flexible services really, and contracted capacity. So looking at finding innovative alternatives to traditional reinforcement solutions across the business. So we're also going to have Stefanos from Piclo joining us to do a bit of a demonstration today. So he's responsible for customer engagement for both flexibility providers and system operators. So here for me and you today. And he's looking at the international expansion of the platform to other markets as well. And we're also going to have speaking Lucy Penketh from within our DSO capacity strategy team, who acts as kind of customer liaison for flexible services and implements some of the changes to contracted capacity that we look after. In terms of our agenda today, so first of all, I'm going to give you a bit of background into flexible services and the kind of market that we operate. And then we're going to look at our current requirements. So that's in relation to the invitation to tender that we issued on the 16th of November, on Monday. Because we've kind of changed the structure of things, we're going to give you a walkthrough of how to participate in this tender, and that will be followed by the guest edit from Piclo, so showing you if you do wish to participate, then how you can register and submit a bid and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have a short break after that, and then look at our industry developments. We do quite a lot of work with other DNOs, so showing the progress that we're making in those spaces, and then finally looking at our ED2 requirements. So tomorrow we'll be publishing an expression of interest for our ED2 requirements. So I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek today. So in terms of our background, since June 2018, when we first started offering flexibility, we've issued 35 different grid and primary requirements. This has been across 7 tenders and there's been a total of 194 megawatts. We're kind of well established at putting our tenders out there. So in terms of what flexible services actually are, it's the term given to the act of reducing consumption or increasing generation following receipt of a signal due to a network constraint. So simply, it means a customer generating more or using less electricity after we've asked them to. The network constraint is when safe network operating limits are breached, but could also be used for managing things like planned outages or disruptive failures rather than just simple reinforcement. But essentially, it means that the requirement for electricity in the area is greater than the amount that the local network is capable of providing. And so in return for providing us with this service, then we are willing to compensate you and pay you for the capacity. In terms of the benefits, this network reinforcement is extremely costly and quite time consuming and can be quite disruptive as well. I think we're upgrading massive assets and towers and substations across the network. So by providing flexibility, which is often a much cheaper alternative to network reinforcement, all of those costs are then passed back to all of our customers in terms of their electricity bills. So by not having to install these large assets, we can also help to reduce CO2 emissions, but it's also a great way to support local businesses and community groups that are perhaps utilising low carbon technologies, really helping people to get involved within the local energy markets instead of the more top-down approach that we've seen over the last 100 years or so. Especially, it helps us to utilise our existing assets, so to make the most out of the capacity that we already have within our assets. So by helping to level out the profile on those through the help of flexible services, we can utilise things better on the network. In terms of why now, so as I said, we've been doing this since July 2018. So that's when the pressure really started being applied in terms of us moving towards more of a distribution system operation rather than being a standard network operator. For driving forces behind this is the huge increase in low carbon technologies that we've seen. So this is in response to our decarbonisation targets, but also consumers are just looking much more engaged now. So we're much more aware about the energy that we consume, and we're looking for ways in which we can do that, cleaner, greener, and cheaper. This has meant that we've seen quite a significant increase in demand on the network. So especially through some of these low carbon technologies like heat pumps and electric vehicles, and that's going to continue throughout the next couple of decades, as seen within all of our forecasting work. So this does require quite significant reinforcement in order to make sure that we can accommodate these technologies on the network, and we've got enough capacity to facilitate them being able to connect in the first place. So providing this reinforcement can ultimately lead to slightly increased cost for customers, as all of our network investment is funded by the proportion of your electricity bill that comes towards us at the end of the day. But this can be quite disruptive. So I'm sure many of you have been stuck behind someone digging up the road before, and it can take quite a long time and be disruptive to a lot of local neighbourhoods. So we don't want to do it unless it's absolutely necessary. So flexible services is a key way that we can help to mitigate all of these risks. This is a short, well, I say simple, diagram of distribution system operation. So this is what we're moving to instead of the standard, more kind of top-down model of a distribution network operator. So it recognises down here, with increased amounts of distribution generation, storage, demand-side response, and increased electric vehicles and heat pumps, then the relationship between us as your traditional network management system and you as the customer is changing, because things are going in and out and up and down a lot more than they used to. So as we move towards this, more complex type of system operation, we need to be aware of all of these types of technologies and how we can monitor, manage and control them. And flexible services is one such way in which we can do that for the benefit of us all. We currently offer 4 types of flexibility. So these are industry agreed standards. So all the different DNOs adopted these 4 consistent products in 2020. So I'll touch on that later in some of our industry developments. But the 4 main products are Sustain, Secure, Dynamic and Restore. These reflect the type of network constraint that we are using them to alleviate. So you can see when required here. So we have the information that goes into developing these products. We look at when is it required, what kind of constraint are we trying to alleviate, what's the risk to our network assets. And so all the parameters underneath these products reflect that work that we do in the background, identifying what's going wrong and what can you do to help. So I'll give you some brief overviews of what these products are. So Sustain is a scheduled response to prevent network constraints. So we provide a forecast in advance and we ask you to provide a response based on that kind of preset schedule. So this helps us in providing additional capacity and capability, and we like to think of it as more of a continuous type of response. So the times in which we use this are more when we do not have enough capacity within an area. So instead of us having to build a new asset to provide that, is there anyone else within that area that could do so instead? Secure is quite similar in that it is again a pre-fault type of product. So we do schedule people in advance, but we do that to prevent the demand exceeding the capacity of the network. So we can use that for things like planned outages or traditional peak locking, so helping us through those traditional peaks in the winter between 4-7 p.m. as everyone gets home, turned on the telly and cooker and stuff like that. Dynamic is quite similar to Restore in that they're both kind of a post-fault or post-network abnormality related products. So this is where you are reacting to something that has then gone wrong on the network. So this allows us to keep the load within the rating of the asset. So that helps us to avoid loss of supply to customers. So because we don't know when faults are going to occur on our network, we can't usually provide a pre-schedule for this. We can give an indication about when we expect, the months of the year in which load may be exceeding the ratings of the assets, but it doesn't become a problem until there is an abnormality on the network. So usually that will be within a kind of 2-3 minute time frame. We'll say there's been a problem and we need you to come and help. So Restore is very similar to Dynamic in that way, in that it reacts to a network abnormality, but this is where we've had a complete loss of supply to an area of the network. So we might ask people to remain off supply so that we can restore other customers on the network as quickly and efficiently as possible. So that's a quick overview of those 4 products. And I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Lucy now so she can walk you through our current requirements. So hopefully you've all seen those in your inboxes in the last few days.
Okay, so we published this tender on Monday. We're really excited because it's the biggest tender that we've done so far, and it's also the first time that we're using PicloFlex to actually procure flexibility. So we're really excited to see the results from that. We've got 17 locations in total, and they're dotted across our patch. So we've got a handful in Cumbria and then a handful in Lancashire, and then the majority of the sites are in Greater Manchester. So just to summarise, we're asking flex providers to provide us with flexibility from April 2022. As I said, it's the biggest one we've done so far. So in that first year, we're asking for 50 megawatts, and that's increasing to 72 megawatts in the second year. And the response types are a mixture of dynamic, secure and sustain. So the competition areas went live on Piclo on Monday, but we also published all of this information on our website on Monday as well. Not all of the information that we publish is on Piclo, so I would definitely encourage you to have a look at the website and look through this information. So on there we've got the invitation to tender terms and conditions, so that's just sort of the T's and C's to the procurement process. There's the common flexibility agreement, so that's sort of the template contract that you'll sign if you're successful. We've got the technical specification, so that sort of outlines the technical requirements that an asset would need to provide us with flexible services. There's the pre-qualification questionnaire, so that's an important one to remember, because if you do want to take part, you'll need to download that and complete it and send it to us. There's the summary site requirements, so that just details all of the 17 sites, outlines how much capacity that we need and when we need it and what our estimated utilisation is. There's the half-hourly data, so this is something that we published for the first time earlier this year. It actually came from some feedback from our last workshop, people said it would be really useful. So we've published that again, but we've gone one step further this time because we published 2 years instead of 1. So we hope that you can use that to see how the requirements are going to ramp up. And then finally, there is the postcode checker. So that's just so that you can check if your asset is in any of the 17 areas where we need flexibility. This is just a view of our procurement timeline. If you've participated in any of our tenders before, you'll probably notice that it is a little bit different to what we've done previously, and that's because we're using Piclo. So the main difference really is that we now have this pre-qualification window, which we didn't have previously. So this time round, we're asking people to apply to our DPS, Dynamic Purchasing System, on Piclo, put your assets on Piclo, and so long as you have an asset that is within one of the competition areas, we'd then like you to download that pre-qualification questionnaire, complete it and send it to us. So we'd like you to do all that, if possible, by the 18th of January. So hopefully you've got long enough to do all that. And then we'll have about a week where we sort of look through those submissions, and you'll receive some comms from Piclo to say whether you've been successful in proceeding to the next stage. The next stage will be the bidding stage, so that opens on the 25th of January. That will be open for about 2 weeks. It ends on the 5th of February. And then after that, we'll have about a month where we review those bids and probably enter negotiations, hopefully to award a contract in the middle of March. So this is just hopefully a handy bit of a checklist for people, just to remember those 3 things that you need to do. So you need to sign up to the DPS on Piclo, complete the pre-qualification questionnaire, and finally submit a bid. And that's all on Piclo. So handily now, I'm going to hand over to Stefanos, who's going to give us a little bit of an introduction and then a demonstration of the platform. So Stefanos, are you okay to share your screen?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lucy and Lois, for having me today. I work at Piclo, and today I will do a demonstration. I'm using the demo environment. The purpose of the demonstration is to help users that they haven't used the service to understand a bit the process, and for those who have in the past to remember few steps. So first of all, the live service is PicloFlex.com, where you can go, you can view the competitions. You don't need necessarily an account, but if you want to participate to the competitions, then you need to press register. It has 4 steps where basically you have to input your details, your company details, and then the request sent to the system, where there is a small check to see if you've registered again in the past, things like that, and then an account approval. Once you register to the platform, then you can access and you can log in. For today's demonstration, as I said, I'm using a demo account. It's a different environment, different from the live, and for this purpose I have made some changes to the competitions, but note that the actual dates is the ones Lucy just presented, and you can see them on the live website. So once you log into your demo account as a Flex provider, you'll see the user interface with the competitions on your right. The 2 most used function is the map and manage page. So if you go on the manage page, you'll see assets, application, bids, and contracts. As the timeline progresses, the first thing Flex provider needs to do is go to applications. This is the Electricity Northwest application. This is a replica from the original. So once you click the application, this window will open, giving you the details, their email, website, why is Electricity Northwest doing the flexibility tender, as you can see here, and also their website with the supporting documentation. So you hit view, and there are 5 steps Flex provider needs to complete. I won't go to each step in detail, but the first one is the contracting organizations, like the registration page. You need to add the name of the organization. If you have a different trading name, your register address, everything that they have a star, it means that they are mandatory fields. If you don't input any details, it won't allow you to move to the next stage. The next stage of the application is the asset ownership. Now we have different kind of ownerships in the UK. Maybe someone is an aggregator and he's acting as an agent on behalf of the asset. Maybe you're an asset owner. Anything really that is your relationship between the legal relationship between the operator and the asset, you can input it here. And you have about 500 words to describe this. The next phase is the audit details. And now we have the ACILES registration number, and that's if applicable. Many organizations have that, so you just need to input a number. If not, that's not a problem. You can choose a file, meaning that you can upload a file which at least covering at least 2 years of your audited accounts. They need to be either zipped if there are more than 1 files, or 1 single PDF. So once you submit the details, organizational questions, this is the section where a DPS simplifies the process for all Flex providers. So instead of having framework agreements for each and every time that you want to go into a competition or to a tender with a DSO, you submit this DPS application, you answer some of these questions that are mandatory, like if you're in administration, liquidation, if you can pay your debts, all these questions that are usually on framework agreement, you answer them here. So you won't need to do this process again and again all the time, every time you want to come. So it's basically streamlining this. So if you answer any of the questions, for example, if your organization is liquidation and you are in a part of a bigger group, you can write here the status. Maybe explaining the situation in more detail. Maybe that's something it can be approved. Another important section that is mandatory is the insurance levels and the liability. For the purpose of the demo, I'm going to input some fake numbers. But again, if you don't have these numbers, feel free to add an explanation here. So you at least write at least a number, a 0, and then I add an explanation. It's not up to Piclo if your application is going to get approved or not. It's up to the distribution network operator, and you can apply as many times as you want if you have been rejected. Now, every time you've been rejected, the DNO will give a specific reason why, so you can rectify it if possible. So once we complete this, we go to submit application. Again, a link to the supporting documentation, which is the website of Electricity Northwest, where you can review. This is a demo, so there is no impact. You proceed that you have the authority and that to sign on behalf of the Flex provider to sign a contract with the system operator. So you press submit. It usually goes, but it's the demo environment, so it doesn't really matter at this stage. So once you submit this application, what you want to do, the next step is upload your assets. So you'll go again to manage assets, and you'll see this user interface. If you are an existing Piclo user, what you can do is download your existing assets, and you can input more information if you have new assets or you want to update information. If you are a new Piclo user, you need to download the latest template, which I've already done. So this is the spreadsheet that you download from Piclo. Please take a moment and read the first tab of the Excel. It's the README. I know many people don't, but it's not that big, and it gives very useful information. It has 8 steps of instruction, some key information around what kind of assets they can participate and the status the asset is, like planned, in development, operational, mothballed, and archived. The type of categories that they can participate in the system. Now, the second tab is the asset file. I know it looks a bit chaotic, but this is, as I said, a demo file, so I keep using it a lot for demonstrations, and I'll show you the basic functionalities. So the asset file can gather up to 35 points of information. Now, depending on the type of asset you are, you might not have all the information, which I will explain. So in order to make sure that you are pre-qualifying in the beginning to see that you can participate to the DSO service, you need to input 5 key information, which is the asset reference, which is a number in alphanumeric string that is required. It's your own asset reference. It's not somewhere you find it. It's a number you have either internally to identify the asset name, the status, meaning is the asset operational, planned, in development, mothballed. If it's planned, it means that an asset it's not under construction, but is in a business planning section where you will have it ready by the time that the contract is activated. In development, under construction, and of course operational, mothball. Archived is a functionality of Piclo in order if you want to minimize how many assets are going to appear in the map. So either you won a contract and you're not going to use the asset again, or you haven't won a contract and you're not planning on building the asset. you just archive. The second information that is the fourth information that is required is the type of asset. So as you can see, we have as you can see on the README section, we have storage, energy efficiency, demand side response, interconnection, low carbon, renewable, and thermal. Now, it's in every category. There's a asset type, so it's a battery, it's a vehicle to grid, vehicle charging, residential, biomass. There are all types of assets that you can fill. These fields are pre-populated, as you can see the asset status. So you won't need to write it by hand. It's a drop-down menu that you can choose. Now, the next crucial point of information is in which voltage level your asset will be connected. Again, a drop-down menu, it gives you a variety of options. I know, too many fake assets, too many times. I need to delete it. So you have a variety of options for a purpose. Right now, it's not working. Let me download the new one. Takes a minute. So drop-down menu, and the asset category, the asset type. So if you choose, for example, low carbon, this will be populated with something different. And then another crucial point of information is the voltage level. You have from 0.24 up to 132 kV, depending on where your asset is. And the last two crucial points of information is the postcode, so the location of your asset, and the country code, which is GB, Great Britain. Now, if you are an operational asset and you know the rest of the information, I please advise you to input all this information. It will make the process more smooth and also will give clarity to the system operator about your assets. So from active and reactive power details to your connection status. Again, the file is not that hard. There are many drop-down menus, so it should be very straightforward. Again, if you have any questions when the time comes for you to fill this, please feel free to reach out at Piclo, and we are more than happy to help you. Metering details, technical details, so like things like technical response time, maximum runtime, minimum runtime, and what's your recovery time, meaning how what is the time in between events that the DNO can call you. Sometimes some assets have 1 day, some assets have 30 minutes, depending on your technology. And of course, if you don't have the postcode and you have the latitude and longitude, this is something you can input instead. A previous asset ref is for the existing users of the platform that they have already uploaded assets, so I won't go into this kind of details. Once you do this process and you save the file, you go back to the platform where you choose a file to upload the file. It will take about 5 to 6 minutes to do, and that is because we are scanning it for viruses and security purposes, and also we populate the details to the map. So as you can see here, a file history section will grow, which will have a view option. So if you've made an error to the file, the system will recognize them, and they will give you a detail of where the error is. So for example, in the latest seat I've uploaded, in the seat assets on row 271, there is an error, and it says exactly what is the error. So you can easily fix that mistake. Now, if you don't have any errors, it says 0 error, so all good, and you will be able to proceed to the map. Now, if you upload your assets and you haven't done your DPS, the system will still populate the assets, but they won't be qualifying. Meaning, if I zoom into a competition that I haven't done the DPS application, it says not qualifying. And here's another window saying for assets to qualify for the competition, you must complete an application. That's a very important step to the whole process. Now, once you've done the DPS and the asset qualification, you can zoom into a competition where there are all the details the system operator has put in regarding what kind of flexibility they want to buy. So first of all, it gives you an update, add assets. In our case, it says add assets because it's on qualifying, so the system doesn't recognize it. And it says qualification clauses, 18th of January. They need the power type, postfold, the product type, like the products our previous presenters described, the direction, the connection. So this is the important point of information I was saying to the asset file. So it's 0.24 kV between 11 kV. Anything can be accepted within this band. And what kind of competition it is. Once you review these details, of course, there are the service windows where you can see when actually the contract will start. In this case, it's December 1st in 2021 until the 28th of February. The time is required, days, what is the minimum aggregated site, so you can have more than one asset in a location and you can aggregate so you can participate. What is the need and what's the minimum runtime. And this is for both windows. So once you've done the DPS, you add assets and you review the details and you feel comfortable, and then you wait for the qualification period to close as explained to the timeline. And then the second part of the process in the platform will begin, which is the bidding stage. So you've qualified as a company, you passed DPS, you've uploaded your assets deemed to be qualifying and they meet all the criteria. So now we go to what we call bidding. So bidding can happen either per competition like that, or you can go to manage if you have more than one assets, and you can submit a bid via this file, via these sections. So it says submit new bids. There are two bids right now open that I need to submit. So I will go to the bidding stage. Now it gives you also the details of how many assets are qualifying and what is your capacity. And again, in order for you to remember the information on the bidding section, you'll see all the service windows and all the details. Now we have two methods of bidding. Either it's asset-specific bidding or it's aggregated. Aggregated meaning that the competition and the system will get all the assets that are qualifying for a specific competition and they will add them together. So in the example, you are bidding 3 out of 3 qualifying assets, capacity of 3.55 megawatt. If you click view or edit, you can choose in with which asset you want to bid with, so they can be separated. Once you choose your method of bidding and how you want to do, you come here and you add the capacity you want. So for example, here the need is for 6 megawatt, my asset is 3.55, so 3.55. As the maximum runtime, let's say it's 2 hours, 30 minutes and 00 seconds, and then you input your availability price. So please keep in mind this is a demonstration. Any of the prices I'm inputting here doesn't necessarily mean to reflect the competitions or anything. It's just a demonstration. So for these purposes, I'll put just 10, and a utilization I'll put 100. And the same thing goes for the second service window. And then once you're confident and happy with your bid, you can confirm that you adhere to the system operator's rules of the competitions and you can submit. when the bidding period is open, you can, and you think that you're not happy with what you submitted, you can log in again to the service and you can submit again a bid, and that means that the previous bid will be erased. Keep in mind, this is only for the period that the bidding is open. So if you do that and the bidding closes, then you will not be able to submit a bid again. All the details of the bids will be sent over automatically to the system operator once this process is over. So they won't be able to see your bids until this bidding window closes. So this is the functionality of the platform. I hope I didn't bore you with my presentation and the way the platform works. If you have more questions, happy to answer. If you want, we can arrange also one-to-one sessions, and you can always reach out to Piclo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So this next section is to look at our industry developments. So we are quite active participants within the Open Networks project. So it's got a dedicated work stream looking at flexibility services, which has got 7 products in it, which I'm going to take you through some of the kind of key highlights of those over the last year and our work going into the future. So this is quite a high profile work stream within the Open Networks at the moment. So we work closely with all the different network operators. We've got representatives from BASE, Ofgem and the system operator as well. Go through, I'll take you on a whistle stop tour of some of these now. So product 1 was looking at a common evaluation methodology. So it was highlighted back in the end of 2019 that all DNOs were using different methodologies in order to evaluate the benefits that flexibility can bring. So because there wasn't a standard format for doing so, you know, people could be accounting for different costs or different levels of optionality or different forecasts. So over the last year, we've been working together, sharing, you know, best practice from all of our different approaches, but also the work from our DFES standardisation as well. So this new common evaluation tool has been developed by Beringer, and it builds on the Ofgem CBA, comparing flexibility versus other network interventions against those scenarios and things like network losses. So it gives us, we would use that for the final evaluation of your bids. So what prices you submit in terms of availability, utilisation, etc. And so that can really help with us in terms of optimising contract length. So it'll show us the optimum length of a contract in order to, you know, demonstrate the most cost efficient solution. So Beringer are currently presenting their findings on this back to the working groups, and it's estimated that from April DNOs will begin implementing this within all of their organisations. So that's been quite a monumental achievement for all the DNOs this year, really, and a really great step forward in terms of making sure that consistency is implemented at all levels of the flexibility process. So I'll take us over to procurement now. So our product 2 looks at procurement processes. So we put out some issues in the recent flexibility consultation with this that we're mainly looking at the procurement. So how would it benefit you if, you know, DNOs were to all issue their tenders at certain points in the year? So it could be in autumn and in spring, or in summer and winter, so that you know that you've got these windows in which you would need to get things ready in order to submit bids. So a bit more structure being applied to the process. So the majority of feedback that came back said that it would be useful if we had these kind of biannual procurement windows. So next year, that's something we're going to look at standardising on, so agreeing the times in the year in which we do all of these. So throughout the 2020, all DNOs have now started using dynamic purchasing systems. So let's see, we've now got ours with Piclo, but we've also implemented the use of pre-qualification questionnaires and criteria. So there's 2 elements to this, really. You've got your company pre-qualification, which is done via the DPS, and then there's also the asset pre-qualification. So that asset pre-qualification is done at the point of the tender issue, whereas the company pre-qualification can be done well in advance. So for example, on Piclo, you can pre-register your company via the DPS, and that allows you to then participate in any of the tenders that we then publish on the platform for the following 12 months. So the main idea between having this kind of pre-qualification period was so that you don't end up wasting any effort. So by having that there, it means that you would be notified prior to the opening of the bidding window whether you are qualified both commercially and technically in order to participate in that tender. So some feedback from people over the years has been that you don't want to wait until, you know, the evaluation of the bid stage to find out that you were in the wrong location, or you were the wrong size, or, you know, you didn't have the right capacity or something. So next year, some of the key work that we're going to be doing is aligning that pre-qualification criteria. So recognise that there are still some differences in what technically pre-qualifies assets across some of the different networks. So we will be looking at how we can make that more consistent. On that as well, it won't be part of product 2 next year. It'll be part of a whole new product of work, but it'll be looking at the clear and consistent reporting. So a lot of this will come out of the clean energy package requirement, which will mandate the DNOs publishing a procurement report at the beginning and at the end of each year, saying what we intend to go out to procure with, and then what we have done, including things like prices and capacities, you know, within each of the regions. So we're going to work on a consistent format of publishing that information, so it will make it easier for providers like yourselves to be able to compare that information across DNOs. So we're going to incorporate into that product some of the other work that we've published on the ENA website, so specifically the flexibility reporting figures. So that's a massive spreadsheet that I think has gotten larger and larger with every time that it gets updated. So we're going to look at how we can make that simpler to engage with, and, you know, easier to extract the information that you really want out of it. So lots done this year and lots more to do next year, really. So in terms of product 3, so this was about the consistent parameters. So for those 4 active power products, at the end of 2019, we all aligned on the branding. So now everyone uses the same terminology of sustained, secure, dynamic restore, etc. But the main body of work this year was to align on the parameters underneath them. So making sure that when you participate in dynamic in Manchester, it's the same as dynamic in London or in Cornwall, just so that it makes it easier for flexible providers to participate in flexibility across the whole of GB, because the products are the same. So this is following on from Charlie's question. One of the key highlights of this was that we reduced the minimum aggregated capacity down to 50 kilowatts. So now, whether you're directly contracted or an aggregated resource, the minimum capacity for both is 50. So that makes it slightly easier, especially if you've got, you know, smaller either domestic or, you know, things like EVs using as part of that aggregated resource. So it just helps to reduce a few more of those barriers. So we're the first DNO to adopt these new parameters because they're being used in this current tender. And we are going to continue to consult on these parameters on an annual basis to make sure that they're always fit for purpose as products, and the way that we develop these markets and operate them continues to grow. So some additional parameters are going to come through from some of the other work streams. So part of the work that we consulted on within the ENA flexibility consultation a few months ago was, do you think there are any additional parameters that we should be including within this? So we did get some comments back, you know, in terms of metering and monitoring requirements, just to make that consistent across all DNOs, because it can still vary. So I'll touch on this within the product 7 stuff in a moment, looking at baselining, but we will have a dedicated work stream in 2021 which will look at the metering and monitoring requirements, so that we can get some more consistency across those technical requirements across the different DNOs. So again, nothing gets completed. We add more on for the next year, but it's just a note to say that these are continuously being developed and reviewed to make sure that ultimately it's as simple and as easy to engage with as possible for everyone. So we're now going to look at the Common Flexibility Agreement. So this was part of Product 4. So originally in 2019, we worked on developing the first Common Flexibility Agreement. So that was published in spring 2020, and we've now published a slightly revised version, which is 1.1, which is the one that we are using for this current tender. So looking into next year, what we're going to do is create version 2. So I hope everyone's up with their version control here. And this will help to implement further consistency across transmission and distribution. So we're currently in the process of reviewing all of the ESO contracts to look at all the different terms and conditions that are stated in there, so that we can help implement some further consistency across them and look at what our approach can be for the future. So a lot of feedback has said that we might benefit from a more framework style approach, like the ESO for a lot of their contracts. So we're going to do some additional work looking into that. And we will hopefully have a version 2 of the agreement demonstrating this closer alignment in 2021. So product 7 is one that is looking at baselining principles. So work is currently underway within the Open Networks looking at establishing a common baselining principle. So it was recognised that each of the network operators was they were all utilising a different approach. So we have commissioned DNVGL to look at this on behalf of the networks, and they have identified that it would likely be more beneficial to have a different methodology for each of the different products. So this also depends on the level of metering and monitoring required for each product. So plan, which has to be submitted in July next year. So in order to do so, we need some more information on available flexibility, so that we can inform these plans and make sure that we are making the best decisions on behalf of both our customers and stakeholders. So that some of the questions that we're asking is how we can better support you in the future. So are these services something that you feel that you can engage in, and if not, what would make them easier? So we ask some questions such as, contract lengths, pricing structures. Are you already connected to the network, or is flexibility something that you would like to provide once you do connect? So in the meantime, we've provided 21 grid and primary sites where we foresee us having flexible requirements within ED2, and we will have a lot more kind of on the HV and LV side, but those will filter through over the next few years. But at the moment, this is an expression for interest, so that we can really help we can gain your feedback on, would you be willing to participate in flexibility in ED2, and also those additional factors of, if not, why, what can we do to help you, how could we make it easier? So this is a highlight of it. So as I said, we've got 208 megawatts, so those are across the 21 grid and primary sites that we've already forecast. So in addition, we will have up to 200 HV and LV sites per year. So we're currently we're implementing some monitoring across our LV network. So we're spending millions of pounds over the next 3 years in rolling out that monitoring, which will allow us to have more visibility of these low voltage networks, which in turn then helps us to open up these voltage flexibility markets. It'll also allow us to, it reduces connection costs and time to connect, because we've got that increased visibility. But can also help you with more local energy markets and peer-to-peer trading and things like that. So we will have estimated up to 200 distribution sites that will become available for each year within ED2 on top of this. So the expression of interest, we're going to have the full documents which are going to be published on our website tomorrow, and in order to submit a response, it's just a short survey online. So it should only take you about 5-10 minutes to complete, but we would really appreciate your views on that. But if we can, build into our business planning for the next 5 years to make sure we take your views into account. A quick overview of our requirements here. This is how much we see them ramping up. So in line with some of our DFES work, which will also be published within the next few weeks, because of the energy efficiency measures that we see coming in initially at the start of the next price control period, things take a bit of a dip, kind of network demand area, but then we do see them ramping up significantly as we see more installations of low carbon technologies across the network. So you see, by the time we get to 2028, we've actually got 100 megawatts of requirements. We're trying to give you as much advance warning as possible, especially for those assets that aren't yet connected, you know, they're looking to connect. So this gives you an indication about where we foresee our hotspots being over the next 5 to 8 years. So this is just a quick insight into what we've got within each region. So Cumbria, there's four requirements with a total of 3.6 megawatts. So some of these are also on our current tender. But as I say, we do experience a bit of a dip at the start because of these energy efficiency measures. Whereas in Lancashire, we've got quite a few as well. So the South Lancashire area, that's actually a group of 3 or 4 substations that we treat as a group because there's quite a bit of interconnectivity between them. But the real hotspots in ED2 are going to be in Greater Manchester. So there's a huge amount of development work going on there and some very strong commitments by the councils. So they're committed to delivering net zero carbon by 2038, which is ahead of the UK's targets. So there's a lot of work going on within Manchester in making sure that they achieve those targets, which we're seeing in our reflected in our forecasts for low carbon technology uptakes. So yeah, there's some real considerable requirements in Manchester. So we do encourage you to complete this survey and let us know, but also if you do have any assets within these areas, then please do upload them onto the Piclo platform as well. So that also helps to paint a bit of a picture for us by knowing what we've got connected where. In terms of what we'd like from you, as I think I've mentioned 5 times or so already, so we would like to know if you'd be able to provide flexibility in any of our ED2 requirement areas, but also even if you've got an asset that could provide flexibility and it's not within one of our GMP requirements. Let's say we are going to have a lot of low voltage requirements later as well, and we're also, you know, expanding the different scenarios in which we can use flexibility to deliver benefits. So we will be overlaying our maintenance program so we can look at providing this support for planned outage windows or disruptive failures on the network. So we're constantly looking for new ways in which flexibility can help us save money and also help to develop the market. So by letting us know where you've got assets and whether you'd like to participate, we can take all that into consideration and, you know, start building future opportunities for us all. So please do complete this survey, but if you do have any additional feedback, then you can always email it to us directly. So we've got our email address here. And then we're going to go through to some questions. Kate is going to post some forms onto the chat, so that's just a short survey and ask a few questions, which we would be really grateful if you filled them in.
Hi Lois, yeah, we have a couple of questions from Charlie in the chat. So yeah. Charlie Baker has just referred to earlier in the slides the flexible services map on our website. And his question is, the places where it is possible will have assets are not in the zones of this tender. Is that likely to always be the case, or will other zones come on stream as time goes by? I'm thinking of areas of housing in Trafford and South Manchester.
Yeah, so the requirements that we've published on Piclo, those are just the ones that we have our immediate requirements for within 2022 and 2023. And then the sites that we've published in our, or we will be publishing within our ED2 requirements, those are just the grid and primary ones that we've got out of our forecast so far. So there will be new sites added. So we currently publish new tenders every autumn and spring. So we have a biannual review process where we go over what the actual loading on the network is, review that against connection applications, and also planned outages, any maintenance windows and things like that. So just because there isn't anything there now, then I'd say come back in 6 months, because it's very likely that we'd have something that you could then participate in. But by signing up to our distribution list, we do send out newsletters every few months. So if there are any requirements, they'll always be published within there. So that's the quickest way to find out where our new requirements will be.
Thanks, Lois. And Charlie's second question was, from a business point of view, it would be great to have an idea of likely incomes. Are we going to have to wait until the first tender results, if they're even public, or do you have an idea of the likely bracket of payments you'll be making or aiming to make?
So we don't currently publish prices for our tenders. So we do want to remain to be market driven, because we think it is the way to get the most cost effective price for flexibility, especially in the most efficient use of our customers' money as well. From a clean energy package perspective, we will have a requirement to publish what the prices are, but that won't be until the end of next year. Yeah, once we've conducted tenders under those new mandatory requirements. But yes, please do register on Piclo. Make sure you fill in the asset pre-qualification questionnaire as well. We look forward to getting as many bids as possible, and please do complete the expression of interest for ED2, because that really will help us shape our approach over the next 8 years. Thank you very much for joining us today.